All right, so today we're diving into Dune Messiah, but we're going deeper this time. We're looking at it through those historical records, those excerpts and perspectives Frank Herbert throws in.
Yeah, it's like it's not just the story this time. It's like we're getting the history around Maudiza right.
Exactly. So, using that, we got to ask, what's it really mean to be Muad'Dib?
It's wild, right?
Right.
We get the Muad'Dib concordance, totally religious,
Yeah.
then Princess Irulan's writings, and she's much more like analyzing everything.
It's like you said, piecing together something broken. Each piece gives you a look at Paul Atreides, but so different each time. So where do we even start with how someone, even someone like him, becomes Muad'Dib?
Well, he was basically raised for it.
Right.
You know, think about it. His mom was Jessica Panegas Reed, completely rebellious. She's training from childhood.
Oh, and the mentant training. Don't forget that. That's intense.
Totally pushes him past even, what were they called? Those outlawed thinking machines.
Mhm.
But here's the thing. Even with all that, Herbert makes it so clear. Paul is pushing against what made him.
Like when he's fighting with himself internally, how he sees the jihad. I mean, he started this galaxy-changing thing, but to him, it's nothing in the grand scheme.
Exactly. He's got prescience. He sees all of time, all of space, like how everything will play out. It's not about some guy winning. It's about how humanity has to move through the universe, whether they want to or
Oh,
not.
you gotta mess with your sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you got those little Fremen pieces, right? To them, he's a god. But here he is dealing with like cosmic stuff, the price of being Muad'Dib, and that's not even counting all the plots against him.
Oh, man. Yeah, talk about pressure. The Bene Gesserits are in on it.
Space and Guild too. And even some Fremen can't stand him.
It's all about who has the power, right?
Always is. Control the spice, you control space travel, control everything. Control Paul's kids. Well, who knows how strong their prescience would be? It all comes back to who gets to decide how Muad'Dib is remembered? Who writes the history books?
And into all of this walks Duncan Idaho, or, well, kinda. The Spacing Guild, they give Paul a goal, hate Duncan, but brought back memories and all, but definitely his own person, too.
Talk about a mind game, right? I mean, hate, just existing, it brings up so much. You've got the memories put there on purpose, the Tleilaxu messing with his creation, and then he starts to become aware. So what is he? Tool, weapon, his own person. You have to think about identity, if you can choose anything, when the fate of everyone's on the line.
That responsibility is insane. But Paul's not alone in dealing with this stuff. We can't forget Aaliyah,
Oh, man.
his sister, right? Born with what? Her grandfather's memories already in her head. Her prescience is way stronger, way weirder. Her story is kind of scary.
Definitely. If Paul shows how much choice matters, even when you see the future, Aaliyah is a warning sign. Prescience can eat you alive. Imagine this young woman, all these memories, other lives just crashing into her. Of course she's going to be messed up.
And nobody around her could handle it?
Makes you wonder, can anyone choose anything, truly choose, when they know what's going to happen? Or are we all just acting out something we can't escape from?
Mhm.
And Aaliyah, she never even asked for this power, this, I don't even know, awareness that just takes over.
You can see it, the way she freaks out, how nothing she does makes sense, always suspicious of everyone, like she's about to break completely. And the people who should be helping her, they're either too scared of her or want to use her for themselves.
Which, again, comes down to control. Even if you mean well, who gets to say what's good for someone like Aaliyah? How can anyone like that be free when just existing puts them at odds with, like, everything and everyone in charge?
Yeah, that's pretty dark when you really think about it. But it also shows how, even with all this wild stuff, the spice, the sandworms, knowing the future, people are still running things with all our problems, all the ways we mess up.
Totally. We love to focus on the big picture, right? But Herbert, he's saying, hey, those big moments, those come from what people do, the good and bad choices they make. And sometimes, even when you want to do good, it blows up in everyone's faces.
And speaking of things blowing up, we have to talk about the big thing in the room. Not a sandworm exactly, but close. Paul's prescience, it shows him something awful, something he desperately wants to avoid. But the more he tries to stop it, the more likely it seems to happen?
Classic tragedy, right? Like something out of Shakespeare. Gets at this question people have debated forever. If you see the future, can you actually change it? Or is that just what you were always going to do no matter what?
It's kind of mind-bending. But let's go back to Arrakis for a second, something that really stuck out in these historical accounts. How Herbert contrasts the Fremen, who worship the desert, and how rich and over-the-top Paul's empire becomes. Like he's saying, hey, can you be spiritual and materialistic?
It's woven right into the whole story, yeah.
It's like because the freemen had it so hard, they had to learn to use every little bit of water to live alongside the sandworms that made their spirituality super deep.
There's something pure about how they lived before, respecting life and death, which you don't see in Paul's fancy palaces, right?
And yet, who makes him a god? The freeman, who decides his prescience is like a message from God. The freeman, it makes you think, even the strongest beliefs, people can twist them to do things that go against what they're supposed to believe.
Which leads us to, well, Muad'Dib just disappears into the desert, right?
Yeah.
What do we make of that? Giving up, trying to run from knowing everything and being in charge.
It's almost mythical, right?
The history's all messed up. Everyone says something different. Some think he's a martyr, sacrificing himself to make up for the jihad.
And others, they say he's still out there, pulling strings from some hidden place.
It's almost like by going away, he's even more important now than when he was alive. That mystery, it just adds to the legend.
So, like, what does this mean for us, people without spice or seeing the future?
Dune Messiah is saying, even with crazy tech and superpowers, people are what matter.
What we decide, what we choose to believe, who we care about, that stuff makes our future, and everyone else's too.
Paul, with everything he could do, was still just a guy. Messed up, driven by love, loss, ambition, fear, all that human stuff. It made him great and it ruined him. And that's a story that still hits home, even after thousands of years.
Makes you think, what will they say about us when we're gone? What'll be our story? What will people learn from us?
And, maybe even more important, what can we do right now to make things better, even if it's going to cost us something?
That's something worth thinking about. So, next time you're in the world of Dune, remember, Muad'Dib is a warning, yeah, but also about hope and never giving up and how strong people can be.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll let you think about the mysteries of Dune Messiah. Until next time. It's a contrast that's woven throughout the narrative.
It's almost like their harsh environment, the one that forced them to conserve every drop of water to live in harmony with the sandworms, fostered a certain spiritual depth.
There's a simplicity to their traditional ways, a reverence for life and death that seems at odds with the gilded cages of Paul's empire.
And yet the Fremen are the ones who elevate him to godhood. They're the ones who interpret his prescience as divine inspiration. It's a reminder that even the most devout faith can be used to justify actions that contradict its core tenets.
And that brings us to Muad'Dib's final act, his disappearance into the vast Arrakis desert. What are we to make of this choice? Was it an act of self-sacrifice, a desperate attempt to escape the burdens of prescience and power?
There's this almost mythical quality to it.
The historical accounts we have are fragmented, often contradictory. Some see it as the ultimate act of martyrdom, a way for Muad'Dib to atone for the bloodshed of the jihad.
Others whisper of a secret escape, a hidden siege where he lives on manipulating events from the shadows.
It's almost as if by vanishing, Paul becomes even more powerful in death than he ever was in life. The mystery surrounding his fate only serves to solidify his legendary status.
So what's the takeaway for us? For listeners who might not have spice flowing through their veins or the weight of prescience on their minds?
Dune Messiah ultimately reminds us that even in a universe of fantastical technology and unimaginable power, it's the human element that truly matters.
The choices we make, the beliefs we cling to, the relationships we forge, these are the things that shape not only our own destinies, but the fate of the world around us.
Paul Atreides, for all his abilities, is still ultimately a man. He's flawed. He's driven by love and lost by ambition and fear. And those very human qualities are what both elevate and destroy him. It's a story that resonates even thousands of years later.
It makes you wonder about the nature of legacy, doesn't it? What will people say about us long after we're gone? What stories will they tell? What lessons will they learn?
And perhaps more importantly, what choices can we make today to shape a better tomorrow, even if those choices come at a cost?
It's a question worth pondering. So as you delve back into the world of Dune, dear listener, keep this in mind. Muad'Dib's story is a cautionary tale, but it's also a story of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit.
On that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of Dune Messiah.
Yeah?
Until next time. It's a contrast that's woven throughout the narrative, yeah.
It's like, because the Fremen had it so hard, they had to learn to use every little bit of water to live alongside the sandworms that made their spirituality super deep.
There's something pure about how they lived before, respecting life and death, which you don't see in Paul's fancy palaces, right?
And yet, who makes him a god? The Freeman, who decides his prescience is like a message from God. The Freeman, it makes you think even the strongest beliefs, people can twist them to do things that go against what they're supposed to believe.
Which leads us to, well, Muad'Dib just disappears into the desert. Right.
Hmm.
What do we make of that? Giving up, trying to run from knowing everything and being in charge.
It's almost mythical, right?
The history's all messed up. Everyone says something different. Some think he's a martyr, sacrificing himself to make up for the jihad.
And others, they say he's still out there, pulling strings from some hidden place.
It's almost like by going away, he's even more important now than when he was alive. That mystery, it just adds to the legend.
So, like, what does this mean for us? People without spice or seeing the future?
Dune Messiah is saying, even with crazy tech and superpowers, people are what matter.
What we decide, what we choose to believe, who we care about, that stuff makes our future and everyone else's too.
Paul, with everything he could do, was still just a guy. Messed up, driven by love, loss, ambition, fear, all that human stuff. It made him great, and it ruined him. And that's a story that still hits home, even after thousands of years.
Makes you think, what will they say about us when we're gone? What'll be our story? What will people learn from us?
And, maybe even more important, what can we do right now to make things better, even if it's going to cost us something?
That's something worth thinking about. And as we wrap up our deep dive on Dune Messiah, I think that's what sticks with me. Maudid's story, it's a warning, but it's also about hope, never giving up, and how strong people can be. Makes you want to ask those tough questions.
It really does. It makes you want to look at the choices we make every day and think, what kind of future am I building? So to everyone listening, keep those questions in mind. Keep exploring Dune Messiah, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.